I think with my first record, I was really trying to get people to feel like a sense of dread,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how time. But at this point, I just want people to have a good time, and if the lyrics hit for them, they hit for them, and if they don't, that's fine. I just want people to enjoy it, and I don't want it to be their cry in their bedroom record. Even if it ends up being that, that's amazing. That's amazing for you if it helps you in that way. But my intention wasn't to do as such. It's more of like your throw it on at a party or like throw it on at the gym and hit some big weights to it or something.
Just a middle finger wrapped around like a velvet glove. You were saying a sinner.
Justin, it's great to see you. Now that the weather is finally getting a little bit warmer in Toronto, that reminds me that last time we spoke, you told me that you were a summer person, but maybe that had something to do with the Mexican lager we were drinking at the time. How are you doing right now?
I am good. Like you said, the sun's out, it's a little warm. I feel like I'm in good spirits. I'm here talking to you. So this is great, man.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, last time we spoke was about a year and a half ago, and then you already told me, like, I've got the new album done.
Yeah.
So the program is finally here. The new album is here. It's going to be here March 28th. But you've been sitting on this material for quite some time. So what's the, does that mean that you finally went back to it and listened to it again to know what you have to talk about? Or does it just feel such a distant thing at this point that you prefer to look at what's coming next?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I listen to it quite often. I have this weird thing where like I have to like my music every single time I hear it, or else I feel like I'm not being true to myself. And I feel like if there's
Hmm.
any sort of doubt anytime I hear any one of my songs, I know I shouldn't have done it. Maybe it's like an obsessive compulsive thing, but like I have to listen to these things to make sure that I made the right choice,
Right.
And no, I mean, I've definitely listened to it a lot. I mean, like you said, I finished this record well over a year ago, so
Yeah.
I've had a lot of time to sit with it, and I love to contrast and compare, with other things too. I like to hear things and go, "Oh, how does this stand up to this?" And kind of do market research, is what I like to call it, against what else is out there,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and making sure it's still current because, yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of old now. But I still think it's holding up. I think people are really going to like it for what it's worth, and I'm excited to finally get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that also mean that um, if it wasn't locked and loaded at that time, that you would be in danger of going back and back and back to rethink and rework things? Like, if we were to not control you, would you find yourself in a Chinese democracy situation?
Well, it's funny enough because I think that when we had met a while ago, I think I actually did do that after the fact. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I ended up adding some more songs to the record a few months after that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think when we had met, I had just finished the record like a month
Yeah.
before. So then I think 6 or 7 months later, actually, I ended up adding two or three more songs to it because I just felt like it was missing something. I don't tend to do that, and I probably wouldn't have done that. And like you said, maybe because of the time that was whether or not it was allotted to us or was just there was a lot of things that went into why it took so long for it to come
Hmm.
out. But I don't need to get into that. But like maybe because of that is what led me to go, oh, maybe I should add some more to it. But I'm not a big believer in doing something like that because we can keep poking the bear every single time we put something out, and it's like
Yeah.
at some point you have to decide that it's done, and you have to decide that okay, well, this was just a snapshot in your life at the moment, and this is just how it came out sounding. If that was the case, if you can keep changing things, then yes, you might end up in a Chinese democracy situation where it takes you whatever, like 20 years to make a record or something.
Yeah.
But I believe in that. I think you just have to commit and put it out, and that's also part of what a great producer does too. So I feel like when artists start self-producing, that's where you kind of get into that never-ending cycle of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
is this good enough?
She's a hungry vulture, circling around my grave, picking through my body.
You say an album really has to be a snapshot of a moment in time. Um, the lyrical content of this album seemed to be a snapshot or a couple of snapshots as well. There are certain themes that come back in different songs. Should we almost call this your breakup album? Uh,
Yeah. It's funny. You're like the first guy finally to nail that. Kind of is, yes.
like is do you use that story of personal kind of being on a romantic and emotional roller coaster? Let's call it that way. Um, should we leave it at that? Is it kind of like a diary come to life, or is there more to the themes of anxiety and self doubt that seem to be hiding under the surface there?
I mean, I think that's always going to be there with my music. But I would say that this record uh, probably has a little bit more to do with the external relationships and how that affected me. I think that at this point in my life, I've grown a lot and I've gained a lot of wisdom through the years. I'm a little bit older, and like my first and second record, I was much younger, and I think I had those records were more about like the battles internally with myself,
Yeah.
where I feel like I've gotten over a lot of that, and now it kind of has become about somebody else in a way, and it's not entirely about one said person. There is a few things mixed in there, but that's definitely like
Hmm.
the overarching theme of the whole record, and I think it adds a lot of emotional weight to this record, and in my mind, it makes it a little bit more mature sounding as opposed
Yeah.
to not melodramatic as some might be.
Pulling leeches off my body. You're the one I can't.
So this album's called The Program, and you've shared already that it's kind of a reference to a group of people that I was around while I was
Yeah,
creating this album. And the cool thing about that group of people was that many of them were strangers until you met them for that process. And you've shared how you've engaged with those people to kind of get instant feedback, and they really influenced this writing. So how, when we're talking about how external people can negatively influence and whatnot, like how hard is it then to let external people in that part of the process? And you said I've matured. Would a Justin 10 years ago allow strangers to give instant feedback on what you're writing? Like, is that something that you had to learn over time to be comfortable with?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely used to have this. I mean, I'm still sort of like that in a way. I don't like to share demos with people. I don't like to send things that are unfinished because
Hmm.
I'm sure many people have told you this too. I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand like the true, they can't really hear the finished product through what you're presenting to them. A lot of ways, a lot of people
Right.
say that they, but I find that they can't. So yeah, 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done that, but I think what made this a little easier was because these people were complete strangers. So
Okay.
um, I didn't have a lot of like emotion, I guess, towards them. It was kind of a little bit more objective in that sense, where like, yes, of course, I cared about what they thought to an extent, but it wasn't like my best friend being like, man, you could do better,
Right. Right. Right.
a little bit more weight that comes with that when it's the people you truly truly care about. And of course, I still care about these people that we ended up hanging out with. But like I said, when you're growing up with somebody, there's a much stronger emotional bond,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
there's kind of a freedom almost in the sense of like having like a complete stranger sort of hear something, and they don't, because they also don't owe you anything, much like you don't owe them anything. There's no you don't color your words because you're afraid of hurting their feelings, as much. So it was actually quite nice to have that experience. It was almost like having like a controlled listening group, where back in the day they used to like test records out with like groups of
Yeah. Yeah.
fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, I mean that was definitely very very literally instrumental to the process, and good for the program, as we would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Does that mean that based on what you just say now, and given that some of these songs are very much, autobiographical, or if, at the very least inspired by that, that when this album is going to come out soon, that for those people that are closer to you, your loved ones, your friends, that you're a little bit more afraid of how they will react, in case they haven't heard the album just yet.
Most of them have heard it by now. I sent it around. It's I have to remember that a lot of the people I hang out with, believe it or not, are not like big rock guys. It's
Right.
kind of. I mean, it's not uncommon for people not to listen to a lot of rock music these days.
Right.
And where I grew up, I was like one of the only rock and roll dudes up in my suburb of Toronto, and if they don't like something, I have to remember, like, okay, well, you're not really like the target audience, should I say?
Yeah, yeah.
For music. I can understand why some of my friends wouldn't like something because maybe it's a little too heavy. It might turn them off. Yeah.
What about the lyrical content though? That as you're opening up quite a bit here.
I think it's fine. I mean, I feel like after my first record, which was like pretty melodramatic and very like emotional on a lot of levels, I was much more afraid for that record to hit the airwaves, because I was like, damn, I'm really saying a lot of really dark, stuff
Yeah.
about myself. And I had a lot of anxiety surrounding that at the time. Well, only come to find out that like a lot of people don't even pay attention to the lyrics. It's like
Right.
it's like, of course, as a singer and a songwriter, I care about the words greatly, but I come to realize that a lot of like casual music fans just kind of like the song. They're not really paying
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
attention to the deeper meaning behind the words. Whereas like, for people like you, or like a lot of other interviews that I've done, all these kind of music people, they've all asked me about the lyrics because they're actually looking into it. And they've all picked up on the fact, like, oh, you're really kind of saying some stuff. There's definitely
Yeah.
you're getting kind of deep here. And I'm like, well, thank you for acknowledging that. But the whole thing is like, while I'm telling my story and telling the things that have affected me, it's also meant for other people to connect to, and it's meant for people to resonate with and maybe help them out through some things. I mean, I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of your purpose or your meaning to the world as a musician is giving people something to connect to. That it lets you know that we're all kind of in this together. There's somebody out there that feels the same way. And if this can help you in your life, then that's really what makes me feel the most fulfilled.
Yeah, yeah. And people can also just have a good time on a song that might be for you as a lyricist hard because it's personal and deep and what have you, but for somebody else it's just that's a fun song. And I find that there's two bands that do this that have this as well, that they have so many fans that just love their music and but might not take the time to go deeper into the lyrics. And there are two bands that came to mind when I hit play on your record for the first time. And I feel like a lot of your album I kind of feels like a weird combination of like Muse and Arctic Monkeys in a way. And those are two bands that are like that. They've got fun songs to dance to, but they actually also have something to say, whether or not you take the time to listen to it. Are those two bands? Do I offend you when I say that this album for me reminds me of those two bands?
Not at all. Those are two of our biggest inspirations. So that's really, really cool that you said that. Absolutely. I agree. It's like, for sure, a lot of the songs too are fun songs. Like it's like
Hmm.
maybe it's lyric dressed up in a fun song, and that's kind of the point. I don't want to. We're not like a mopey band. We're not like
Yeah, yeah,
we're not like a dreary kind of like depressing group. The music's not supposed to be that way. I still want people to have a good time, but my favorite rock music is one that rides the line. It's like Soundgarden is like really, really heavy, and it's like kind of just like good rock music a lot of the time, but then they have the dark moments, or maybe like this song feels like it's an uppity kind of like fun rock song, but then you listen to the lyrics and you're like, wow, he's really saying some shit.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's kind of where I'm trying to ride the line, because we're not like an emo band or anything like that. And this time around, I feel like it's become more and more mature as the years
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
have gone. I think with my first record, I was really trying to get people to feel like a sense of dread,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how time. But at this point, I just want people to have a good time, and if the lyrics hit for them, they hit for them, and if they don't, that's fine. I just want people to enjoy it, and I don't want it to be their cry in their bedroom record. Even if it ends up being that, that's amazing. That's amazing for you if it helps you in that way. But my intention wasn't to do as such. It's more of like throw it on at a party or like throw it on at the gym and hit some big weights to it or something.
I'm lying. When you think I'm weak, stick your teeth in deep, baby, I'm your tyrant.
There is a heaviness in the music to this album for sure as well. You've I remember when we spoke last that you were like, "Hey, this is gonna be like this is my biggest, boldest, most ambitious work yet." And you give us a lot of new elements or a lot of new ingredients. There's heaviness, yes. There's also like slide guitar in there and stuff like that. Were there elements that you tried in this rush? Because I think you told me that you were in the studio for 12 days without seeing the sunlight or something like that. Like it was an intense period. You might not remember everything anymore now in detail, but are there elements on this album that are new to the sound that for you really stuck and that we should expect more as you're undoubtedly already creating what's next?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've already started the next record, but there's a lot more like funk elements, kind of disco-y, kind of
Mm-hmm.
on this new record, as you've probably heard. Like, there's a lot of kind of like janky, kind of like funky guitar stuff, and excuse me, a lot of like almost Bee Gees-esque backup vocals and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think people should expect some more of that going forward because I kind of want to keep pushing into this like kind of like dancey, heavy rock
Mm-hmm.
world, because that's kind of like what I want to hear. I want to get up and I want to shake my ass, like I want to groove. I want to
Yeah, yeah,
have a good party to rock music. And rock music, I feel like these days is not like very fun anymore. Like when you listen to like 70s rock, it was all like boogie and a good time. Like, yeah, maybe the lyrics might paint a different picture, but that's also just being real. And
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
lyrics are just, I'm not going to lie, about how I'm feeling. I'm not going to write something I don't believe in, but the music doesn't necessarily have to reflect what the words are. And yeah, definitely those like funky R&B kind of elements. I think people should expect a bit more of that going forward, and I would like to lean more into that stuff as we go forward. I mean, there's a song I wrote for the new record that is like the quintessential dance rock song that I think just perfectly blends all the heavy riffs, because it's also one of the riffiest songs we've ever done. We're kind of like finding our own niche basically within this subgenre of rock.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's we're gonna get all the comparisons. I mean, people are gonna say, like you said, Muse and Royal Blood and whatever.
Yeah.
For years to come, I'm sure we're never gonna shake a lot of that stuff, which is totally fine because those bands are awesome and we love them. But I would really like to try to keep finding a more definitive sound. I feel like on this record, we kind of hit on something that's a little bit more unique
Mm-hmm.
I think, at least.
Yeah, just in time for that fabled third record, right?
Yeah.
To find the sound.
Well, that's what they say. Your first two records are easy. If a band can make it past the third record, then they've really made it. But it's a third record curse. Most bands either fall apart or keep, or that's what sends them into the stratosphere. So we'll see how people receive it. I mean, I think we did a good job. Obviously, we did our best. I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I'm sure any artist would sit down and tell you, like, oh, what we're doing, I believe this is the best thing we've ever done. And I
Sure,
truly
yeah.
do. But I also believed everything we did in the past was the best thing we've ever done. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
goes away, I probably wouldn't put out a record.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can't help you now. No way, no how. When you think I'm weak, sink your teeth into.
Just to kind of wrap us up with something different, you said, you really love that 70s, funky R&B driven or rhythm driven pop rock, if you will. But then people that have seen you live, the 170 song that you've covered many times live, I wouldn't necessarily call a disco song, War Pigs by Black Sabbath. Um, Although, obviously fantastic, playing in there, a fantastic song. What's your thought on the one time last show that Black Sabbath is gonna put on to celebrate one more time the original lineup with Ozzy may or may not be on stage a lot with that big stuff. Like as a fan yourself, clearly of that kind of music. What are your thoughts on these kinds of one-time comeback shows 60 years later?
Love it. I even considered getting tickets because I think they're doing it in the UK. So I was like, maybe I'll fly over there and see it. Like, especially listen, for fans like myself that like I'm only 27, I didn't grow up in that era. You know, I wasn't there when it happened. So I think it's a really cool opportunity for people who didn't get to be there, you know, to go and see to go see it. I mean, obviously, you know, it's probably not going to be. Let's just be honest here. They're not at their best anymore. They're old guys.
Right.
Okay, but that's also a triumph. I mean, the fact that they get to do this, what, like 50 years after the band, 60 years? I don't even know how long they've been a band, but it's been a long, it's been well over like two lifetimes for me that they've probably been around. Um,
Yeah.
it's just a testament to show like how timeless they are and how great that they are. And, you know, I loved when Led Zeppelin did it, when they did the Celebration Day thing or whatever.
Hmm.
I think or something.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I almost went to go see Michael Jackson when he was going to do that final tour. You know, me and my dad were talking about getting tickets and going to Europe to see him as well. It's like all the power to them. You know, it just shows that the timeless nature of what they can do. It doesn't matter to me that Ozzy is, you know, unfortunately, you know, he's dealing with Parkinson's or something, and he's not able to
He's
do
not
what
able
he
to
used to.
walk anymore. Yeah.
But still, it's like what a career, you know. It's probably going to be a very emotional night, and I will go if I can. You know, I was lucky to see Black Sabbath years ago when I was in LA. Obviously, Bill Ward wasn't playing drums,
Right.
but it was still one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. I mean, that was probably 10 years ago, and they sounded incredible. Ozzy always sounds great, though. You know, like I saw him solo as well a couple
Yeah.
years ago while I was playing guitar, and he sounds fantastic. He's always been like, it's like one of those things where, like maybe Ozzy is kind of a mess off stage, maybe, but like as soon as you put him on stage, it's like autopilot, like you know,
Yeah.
like it goes. And I think it's really cool when bands get to do this kind of stuff. I mean, it's much like Kiss doing their big send off at like MSG last year. You know, they did like 2 nights there, and it's like, why not go out with a bang? You know, let's leave them with something, you know, special. Do the
Yeah. Yeah.
hometown, do go back to where it all began. Like I would love to say that in 60 years' time, you know, Broken Love plays their final show in Toronto, Canada, and that's the big send off. It's like the Tragically Hip doing their final show in Kingston. It's like
Exactly.
that was every Canadian. I was in LA at the time. Every Canadian in the world watched that show, you know, and it was amazing. And you know, he still sounded fucking fantastic to the day he died. You know,
Yeah.
so all the power to Sabbath, all the power to all of them. I think it's really awesome what they're doing. I think it's really cool to bring in Bill Ward back to actually do it properly because fans want that. You know, it's
Of
like
course.
I wanted Ace and Peter to play on the Last Kiss show, but you know, Paul and Gene, what are you gonna do? You know,
Yeah, yeah. What to properly wrap us up, you said like, you know, when Ozzy goes on stage, it just that's autopilot, and all of a sudden he's there again, no matter how he was before. Um, how how big is the difference between Justin on and off stage, and how easy it is it for you to turn on that autopilot? Like, is there a different persona on stage than the one that talks to me now or that has a beer before the show?
for sure. I think on stage, it's like you kind of just tap into something. I mean, it takes a couple of years to get to that point. I couldn't say that I had the same thing when we were first touring. You know, it took a long time to
Hmm.
sort of it's my own. Um, but now it's like second nature. You kind of get up there and, you know, I used to like choke between songs. I wouldn't know what to say, you know, and you kind of develop a persona or like a character when you get on stage at a certain point. You kind of develop your moves over time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you put me on stage, I just kind of go, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a completely different person, but I would definitely say that you amplify it. You know, it's definitely me times 10 when I'm up
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
You know, needless to say, I'm also playing a guitar the entire time, so I can't go too crazy. I have to play and sing and be on
Right.
90% of the show, you know? But thankfully, I got, you know, Kyle and Nick going absolutely bananas like the entire time we're on stage. They make
Yeah,
up for
climbing on the amplifiers and stuff like that. I remember from last time. They're pretty good guys.
I got to do it because I can't do a lot of that stuff when I'm just singing. But you know, I try to make everything effective and I try to work my stuff. I don't know if I could call myself a great phone man by any means, but maybe some people would describe me as such, and I would be honored to be called that.
There you go. There you go. Also, maybe just a little bit more, just like with writing your music today. you care less about people's expectation than in those early days?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, of course, I want people to love it. I definitely want. I don't want to disappoint fans, you know.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
but like, you can't come in with that perspective anymore. I mean, I feel like you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot, and I think that's why it took so long to make this kind of record. This is kind of the record I've wanted to make for years, but out of fear, yeah, that people wouldn't like it or that it wouldn't be considered cool or whatever, you know. But I definitely care less. That's why, you know, if people have been asking me lately, like, are you nervous for the record to come out? I say, no, I don't, not really, because I don't really care if people don't like it, you know.
Hmm.
That's kind of their prerogative. If they don't like it, I'm sorry. And if they love it, great. You know, I just know that I love it, and that's what we're standing by, you know, as a band. And that's really what matters to me the most is trusting my own intuition and just trusting my taste.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm sure that as you're going to be promoting this album heavily, it's only the start of the year after all, and we'll see a lot of you, that you'll get a lot of fans to react in that way. Justin, thank you so much for taking ample time to dive deep with me in maybe more the psyche behind this album this time, but I appreciate you opening up and answering our questions, and I look forward to seeing you on a stage next.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.